Welcome to Notepad. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Today we shall explore digital asset exchanges approved by the Securities Commission in Malaysia. We've had a few of them over, including Synergy, Tokenized, as well as Luno. Today joining us is MX Global Sdn Bhd CEO Faz, previously from MDAC. Of course, Datuk Fadzli Shah is a familiar person in the fintech space, so it's always a pleasure speaking to him right now. How are you, Faz?
Fine, thank you very much, Ibrahim, and thank you so much for having me on Notepad.
The last time we spoke, you were still with MDAC. Of course, things have changed following your appointment as the CEO of MX Global. Before we jump into this and into the issue deeper, let's go through with MX Global's Sdn Bhd. What do you guys do, and how are you pushing forward with your recently approved nod from SC to be a recognized market operator in digital asset exchanges in Malaysia?
Exactly. So we are the fourth and most recent recipient of the Recognized Market Operator Digital Asset Exchange registration with the SC. So first and foremost, we're really thankful to the SC for their patience and their guidance throughout the entire process. We essentially are a cryptocurrency exchange, what most people know as a cryptocurrency exchange. And as you pointed out, there are now four which are legally recognized in Malaysia to be able to operate this business. So we got the approval in July, and we went to market with a 0% trading fee across the board. You can trade for free on MX Exchange for the first 6 months, and we've seen a very encouraging support and adoption by our users over the last really 5 months, and we're really looking at that how this market has shaped over the last few years, and I think testament to a lot of the early pioneers of the space, and once regulated, the three licensees, they've done a great job at honing the retail market. We believe that there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're more than happy to cooperate and collaborate with our peers there. At the same time, we see a huge opportunity in the institutional side of things, and also in being able to integrate a lot with some of the other players in the fintech space. So we don't believe that the innovation in cryptocurrency should be limited to just the exchange itself, but having an exchange be a centerpiece and recognize and then legitimize this industry in Malaysia. What else can we do that's interesting for users and investors so that they get the most out of their cryptocurrency investment?
It's also important to note that Malaysia's market is actually quite nascent when it comes to digital asset exchanges. However, one would argue that we have a lot already approved for. Do you feel that the market is big enough for the SC to sustain 4 licensed DAX, or do you feel that there's more room to grow, even for more entrants or more players to come into the space?
Well, it depends how you look at it, right? So a recent report put Malaysia and Nigeria way up there as some of the highest adoption rates in the world. I believe Malaysia clocked in at about 11% market penetration. Now, it's important to bear in mind that when they count at 11%, there's obviously double counting and duplication, because by the nature of digital assets, a person could have multiple Bitcoin wallets and multiple Ethereum wallets, and so those were counted as individuals, because there's no identity or there's no physical identity tied to each of the wallets. That in effect is one of the opportunities and challenges within this space. But more to your point, are 4 players enough in this space? Well, if you look holistically, the regulations or guidelines of digital assets in Malaysia are beyond just the exchanges. So they also have an upcoming initial exchange offering operator license, and then they also have the digital asset custodian license. So I think as these come aboard, you'll see many more interesting things being done in the market. So I think that there's still a ways away for us to grow. So retail adoption is great, but how do big businesses get involved, right? How do maybe we work with the likes of e-wallets and digital banks? How do we work with a traditional bank, for that matter? So I think there's a lot more to be done. What's great about the Malaysian market is that, yes, it is a relatively smaller market when you look at the global scheme of things, but the equivalent of an ARPU, or the revenue per user, or even the asset owned per user, is relatively high compared to some of our other neighboring markets. So I do think it's a market that is going to continue to grow, but I believe that the Malaysian investor, both corporate and individual, are going to be much more demanding of this space, and they're going to want more than just your vanilla flavor buy a blue chip kind of cryptos. They want to be able to do more things with those cryptos, and that's, I think, where we're headed, and we want to
All right,
champion that really for the market.
that we can explore even further on that, but for now we'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll continue more with Datuk Fadzli Shah of MX Exchange. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me Datuk Fadzli Shah. We're talking about the latest entrant towards being a recognized RMO DAX licensee holder from the Securities Commission. Faz, let's talk a little bit more about the offerings that you guys have today, and maybe we can tease you into talking to us a little bit more about the plans that you have in the near future.
Certainly. Today, we're fairly vanilla flavor in that sense. We support Bitcoin and Ethereum for you to trade against your ringgit pair, and that makes up 65% of the global market dominance, right? So these two, I guess what you call blue chip cryptos, are here and they're very dominant in the global scene. So with that, we've really seen a good uptake of retail investors. What we have in terms of the pipelines, like obviously in the Malaysian regulations, we're not able to support. We are now able to support Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and Ripple. But we ask ourselves the question of whether those make sense as the next 3 coins that we're going to be able to onboard to the exchange. As you know, the regulations have been in place for about 3 years now, and many things have changed, right? Like a month in crypto is a couple of years in some other industries. So we're really looking at that, and we do believe that there are some other interesting alternative coins or alternative cryptos which would be a huge value add to for access to the Malaysian investor.
There's also that whole notion of digital assets per se, not necessarily in crypto, but in other areas as well. NFT saw a boom in 2021 with a lot of expectations that the number will continue to grow, if not exponentially, in the year 2022. What would be some of the digital assets outside of crypto you think has potential in Malaysia, and will MX Global go into these kind of areas?
Yeah, so as much as we want to be able to push for innovation, we have to be quite cognizant of where we're pushing the innovation, right? So I take myself back to my days in MDEC of identifying the different layers within the industry. NFTs are a use case of predominantly what you see in the market now, Ethereum, Solana, Polygon. So we would love to support the future innovation of NFTs, but do we feel that it has to enter the regulated space? No. So we want to work one layer below that and make sure that if the NFT demand in Malaysia is built upon Ethereum or built upon Solana or built upon Polygon or BNB for that matter, then how do we work together to be able to support marketplaces that want to play in that space while it's not regulated, to ensure that Malaysian investors can come on board and buy those cryptocurrencies that will ultimately fund their purchase and sale of their NFTs. So we're really looking at it from I guess that layer, Ibrahim. So there are multiple players in the market. I believe one of them is even using BNB or Binance, the Binance coin. So we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that there is a safe and regulated way for Malaysian investors to on-ramp and also off-ramp from those cryptocurrencies.
You know, you touched on a critical factor here in Malaysia. We're highly regulated. In fact, I would like it as such. Thinking back, consumer protection is also key. Financial literacy is very low in the country. We need to have some sort of a big brother approach to watch us, but at the same time, try to be as innovative and as flexible as possible. Because of this, how do you feel about the regulation aspect of the country? Do you feel that it's too restrictive, or do you feel that more regulation is needed? Where do we stand when it comes to getting innovation across, but at the same time doing so in a safe and regulated manner?
It's a very hard balancing act, right? And I'm not I'm not envious at all of anybody who's working in the Securities Commission or Bank Negara. It is a very, very difficult issue to kind of confront. On one hand, you have investors who want to have access to these asset classes that they perceive to have much better returns than maybe what they can get in the traditional bank or traditional money markets or even securities markets, right? Whether equities or debt-based markets. So, but on the other hand, you also have the issue of, yes, scams and also the unregulated entities and basically capital flight risk to the ringgit. So it is not an easy thing to do. I would take generally on it is like, wherever the market goes, whether it's NFTs or next DeFi or play to earn games, there's going to be this this layer which not to say unites, but it's the foundational layer upon all of this, which is what are those cryptocurrencies, right? What are those digital assets? So coming back to my example just now of NFTs, we view that as a use case. So maybe things will change and develop and progress further with innovation on NFTs. But for now, what we can see is, how do you get the Ethereum? How do you get that Polygon? How do you get that BNB, for example, to be able to buy your NFTs? So I think this kind of balance for now is supportive of innovation. So you can still innovate at the application layer, but really it's the onus is on us and responsibilities on us as the recognized market operators to make sure that you're able to buy these cryptocurrencies in the best and safest and secure way possible. Having said that, I do know that the majority of the Malaysian market, and this is a well-known fact, will go out there and access those maybe unregulated or offshore services, and I think that's a different kind of worms, and maybe a question better addressed to the SC than to ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the regulators need to address this wholeheartedly, but I still want to ask your own opinion. When consumers do step outside the regulatory realm and try to enhance their products and services in unregulated spaces, what's your thoughts on this, and how do you approach this when you meet individuals like this?
We get that all the time, right? A lot of our investors, existing customers, or even customers interested in joining MX Global's platform, they ask us, when will you have staking? When will you have lending? When will you have all sorts of these new permutations of DeFi, for example? My quick answer to that is, well, a year and a half ago, there's no such thing called DeFi. So a lot of these things are brand new. But we have to take the necessary measures and steps to ensure that when you as a Malaysian investor come in, we have that liability and responsibility to make sure that where you're putting your money is safe from the point of view of that legal transaction, right? The risk that you take may be on the underlying asset itself, or maybe you're making a punt on the technology, but it shouldn't come at the expense of you being able to transact your money safely, knowing that when it comes to MX Global, it's not in our operational bank account, but in a trust account. So we do try to buy ourselves some time, if you will, with some investors, and investors should be aware that if they step outside the regulatory realm, any downside is in no way protected, and there's no recourse through the regulator, right? Whereas if you are trading with one of us, the regulated ones, we can't do anything fishy or snide with your assets. The owners and the responsibilities on us to ensure that those are always safeguarded. But of course, it doesn't remove the market or business risk or commercial risk of your investments. It just assures you that when you give us $1, it is worth $1 in our books, and where that dollar is invested is going to where you intend for it to go. I think at this point I should make a distinction between, yes, there are unregulated exchanges out there which are providing a legitimate platform for you to exchange in, but I don't think that that's where the biggest challenge will be for the regulators. The biggest challenge will be in these fly-by-night websites that promote themselves as exchanges, and then you're essentially sending money to some unknown person, potentially not even a legal entity. And when you open the website, 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe 2 years from now, everything's gone. And I think that's the bigger risk to the Malaysian investor.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that actually. The fly-by-night versus, I guess, famous ones. Can I use those kind of words?
I would say maybe not the term famous, but the unregulated ones who are providing a legitimate product in terms that the product actually does do what it says.
But that's the point, right? Because it's unregulated in Malaysia, therefore anybody can claim that they are doing legitimate business. That's the harm right there.
Yes.
Okay,
that's right. And we've seen multiple accounts of this, right, in the past, in the last really 6 or 7 years that cryptocurrency has been around. I don't want to name some of those companies or schemes, if you will, but people have lost hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of ringgit out to those. And unfortunately, some of those people have lost their entire life savings, right? And so it ruins people's financial horizons, primarily because you go to cryptocurrencies and you see numbers which are multiple folds superior to what your bank is proposing to you, right? So you see a 0.something% yield on FD, and on the crypto side you see 12%, and that's pretty good. But sometimes one of these fly-by-night operators will say, here's a 2,000% return per year, and then you bet the bank on it, and unfortunately later it turns out that there was nothing there to start with, right? So those are really, really dangerous, and I think more importantly, long term, it kind of shapes the investors' expectations of what crypto is about. So I want to emphasize that point. When you're with one of the regulated entities, or if you've had a good experience on maybe the unregulated one, but knowing that there is a barrier, or there is a point beyond that regulatory environment where you're not protected as an investor, you know, things will evolve. Rates will probably go down. Things will kind of simmer down. But do not put yourself in a position where you're not sure who you're sending money to, and you're not sure what you're buying.
Absolutely. Okay, one more short break before we continue our conversation with Faz of MX Global. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me Datuk Fadzli Shah, the CEO of MX Global, the fourth recognized DAX or digital asset exchange by Securities Commission. Faz, let's talk a little bit more about your thoughts in the near term when it comes to cryptocurrency. We've touched a little bit about some of the ideas that might be done by your company. But generally speaking, it's 2022. People are talking about digital assets. The notion that this is new is actually quite redundant. It's been around for quite some time now, and people are very familiar with some of the products, yet a lot more people are still entering this space and trying to learn more about it, particularly the I guess elder generation, which may have the cash but not necessarily the nuances and the technical know-how to get around things. Where do you feel when it comes to product offerings and the kind of strategies that is going to be employed associated with it, when it comes to trying to attract new customers that might be interested in this but will have some sort of a barrier towards understanding the products and services being offered by companies such as yourself?
That's a great question, Ibrahim, because internally, as we aligned our strategy for 2022, and in fact our short-term and mid-term strategies, we're really looking at three core pillars, right? Number one, it's S, E, and R. So the first is that we want to assure the public, and we want to go out there to the market with a reputation that tells you this is a safe place to invest your money, right? Like nothing you're going to give us will be taken for granted and or abused in that sense. But the second one, which we're making quite great strides in, and we hope to be able to launch a few products into the market in the coming year, is to make it easy, right? So the E there is for easy. And we are totally cognizant of the fact that even with some of our early adopter users, that sometimes on paper it looks good, and I think when we talk about it, it looks good to be able to offer a full-fledged exchange dashboard. But for some users, especially the ones who are experiencing it for the first time, it's a lot to take in, and you could make some mistakes of clicking the wrong buttons. And obviously, the responsibility is on you as a user to know what you're doing. So we as we're understanding more and more of the expectations of the investors, we are actively looking at how do you streamline some of these to make the experience really easy, intuitive, so that when you go out there and you just want to buy a Bitcoin, you're sure that you're getting a market rate, and the transaction can go through seamlessly, and you go to bed knowing that what you've done today is exactly what you expected to happen. The third part is really to try to make all of this real, right? When you buy company shares on the Bursa, or when you buy some sophisticated investors would be buying bonds, for example, right? They're not so liquid, and your utilities is minimal or marginal beyond just an investment product. So how do you make it usable beyond just that status as an investment asset class? And with the beauty of being in, yes, arguably maybe a slightly more laggard market when it comes to kind of innovation offerings, is that we have the ability to see what has worked in other markets. So without giving too much away, we do know that there are many offerings out there in other markets, both regulated, unregulated, which are not available to the Malaysian public and the Malaysian investor. So those are some of the partnerships that we're lining up to be able to make your crypto investments more real, more usable, higher utility for you, beyond just kind of an investment portfolio.
Of course, this is contingent upon the regulators and the market trying to walk hand in hand with you guys in not just understanding the products and services that you guys roll out, but appreciate the kind of things that you want to do. Do you feel that there will be a lot of consumer education, regulator education, perhaps knowledge sharing between all parties involved to ensure that everybody's on the same page, particularly when it comes to nuanced products or products that is nascent to Malaysian market?
Yeah, so I have to give it to the SC for all that it is and our experience so far. They have been very receptive and open, and obviously a lot of these conversations about rolling out new products, they are multi-layered conversations, right? There are lots of nuances, and then obviously it impacts other parts of the financial market. So I think we're quite happy that they are open to at least considering it. And of course, it will be a marathon. None of these things are sprints, and we're willing to put in the time and the work. And I think on that note, that's also who we're looking out for, right? So if I can just give a shameless plug here, we're constantly expanding, and we're looking for great guys to join our team to be those innovators and to understand that we're working this in partnership with the regulators, right? So to be our business development and innovation guys working together with the regulators. So I do expect that there's going to be a high degree of knowledge sharing between us and the regulator. At the same time, it is something that is top of our mind, that the investor education, both retail and institutional, is very, very important. So if you want to get the recipe right, the engagements have to be on all fronts, and we're trying our best to do those both offline and also online.
Final question to you is on risks involved in 2022. What would be some of the ideas that you can share with us when it comes to macro risk on the industry, as well as some of the risks that might be pertinent to your business?
Yeah, I think at a global level, you will see a lot of consolidation, right? To put it very simply, a couple of years ago, there's only one Ethereum. Today, there are many layer 2 protocols or solutions on top of Ethereum. There are also many competing chains that do things similar to Ethereum. So I think the smart contract layer, essentially what enables a cryptocurrency to be more than a currency and just to do those magical things that you've mentioned before with DeFi, NFTs. There's just a lot of options now in the market. So I think that's going to be a consolidation. What's going to lead to the consolidation, I think, will be the demand by investors on, for example, transaction speeds, and the equivalent of transaction or gas fees, So I think that's DeFi is going to come to a state of maturity where I think you're going to see much more well thought out and more committed products coming to the market. We're keeping a very close eye on that. The other macro risk, if you will, that you'll see is that as we've seen in 2021, many new institutionals come into the space at a macro level, and so that's going to move the price action quite a bit, I believe. So we're keeping our eyes, or rather our ears, on the ground to what are the conversations happening at the World Economic Forum, what are the conversations happening with the congressional hearings in the US, because I think ultimately that determines whether your big global giants of the Wall Street and the internet companies of the world are going to be jumping into this field. I think thirdly, and I think what a lot of people in Malaysia are very excited about, is the metaverse, right? So we went through this very funny stage where we're living normal physical life, and then we went into this forced MCO where a lot of our interactions then just became really dominant on the virtual worlds. But now this virtual world really is coming up, and people are going to be willingly spending a lot of their time and building out their personas on, it's like Facebook in virtual life. So I think those applications will be, as we've seen for NFTs, because that's a part of crypto or blockchain which resonates the best with the mass market, because there's something to see and appreciate and in some essences feel from those products. So I think we're very, very excited with what the metaverse will shape out to be.
Fantastic ideas, Faz. It's a pleasure speaking to you. I will ask you to come on the show again if you would indulge me. But for now, that was our conversation with Datuk Fadzli Shah, the CEO of MX Global Sdn Bhd. If you've missed any part of this show, just head on to Astro, AWANI, look for Notepad, or look for MX Global or SC or DAX. Those are the kind of tag keywords that you can find on our website as well as on our social sites. Until then, thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.